That's a clown question, bro.
Hi, what's up on you?
So I'm gonna kick some dirt.
He gets on base.
Just a bit outside.
I'm not the type of player that's going to be Johnny Hustle.
If you don't want me to watch the ball, you can go get it out of the ocean.
And welcome to the show to be named later, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I am your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, it's been a busy couple of weeks for us. We took a brief hiatus from history because of school, but that is over and we are getting back into it.
Yeah, finals week approached, and we're very dedicated to the history podcast. So it would be kind of unfair to the audience if we, compromised our efforts towards the history show. So we skipped the last week. We have a great episode for you today. On part one, we got Lou Gehrig, who has one of the most unique stories in baseball. One half of the greatest duo in baseball history. A ton of other different things. Part two, we got the 2018 Milwaukee Brewers, our newest team yet. And yeah, Lou Gehrig, it's very important to talk about him because personally, one of the reasons I put him on the list of players is, he's very well known, and the idea of the list was not necessarily to put guys that are known. I have a couple of guys that are legends like Willie Mays, and Lou Gehrig's very well known, but I think his legend isn't necessarily because of how well he was, how good he was as a player. Like, people think of how he died. People think about how he was, a part of Murderers Row, and he was number 4 and humble, had the game streak, which was a big deal. Nicknamed the Iron Horse, which I messed up when we announced it. I called him the Iron Man. That's Cal Ripken Jr. He's the Iron. Lou Gehrig is the Iron Horse. But yeah, it's important to talk about him because he was actually unbelievable as a player, and I don't think it gets recognized enough. He has the 3rd highest OPS of all time. I don't think that gets talked about enough. It's just that all kind of gets swept under the radar behind the game streak and the way he passed away. So we're going to start with how Lou Gehrig grew up.
So Lou Gehrig was born in New York City, where he would end up playing all of his career. And he was born as Henry Louis Gehrig. And it was rumored that he was born at 14 pounds. He was a big baby. And his mother gave birth to 4 children, but unfortunately, fortunately for Lou, but unfortunately for the family, he was the only one to survive past the age of 3. And when the family was 5, they moved into a different apartment, which was within shouting distance of the stadium of the New York Highlanders, which was the previous name of the now recognized New York Yankees. They were also close to the Polo Grounds where the New York Giants played. And this is where Gehrig grew an appreciation for baseball. I mean, he was right by him. He started going to Giants games when he would sit in the left field bleachers for 25-cent tickets. And he would also play in pickup games. And his mother was not thrilled with Gehrig being this invested in baseball because she wanted him to be more dedicated with school, which, that's understandable. I mean, baseball isn't always a realistic dream, but it sure was for Lou Gehrig. And despite his mother's desires, because of his mother's desires, he toned down on the baseball activity, but still found time to play on the weekends and in the summers. And eventually he enrolled at Commerce High School in Manhattan, where he showcased his talent in baseball and football. And eventually in the summer of 1920, just 100 years ago, Gehrig played in a matchup in between the New York City high school champions and the Chicago high school champions at Cubs Park, which was later named Wrigley Field. And he made his mark by hitting a grand slam over the right field wall at Wrigley. And after graduating high school, he enrolled at Columbia University on a football scholarship, as college baseball had yet to be kind of organized.
So now we enter Lou Gehrig's sort of rocky road to getting an MLB contract. Obviously, he specialized in football and baseball. And before he even attended the college, a New York Giants scout, New York Giants baseball team scout, Arthur Irwin, who knew about his performance in Chicago, approached Gehrig about a tryout with the New York Giants, and also told Gehrig that Giants manager John McGraw had seen him play and would like to sign him to a contract. Unfortunately, this was sort of fabricated. John McGraw, the manager, had not yet to see him play, and Gehrig at one point hit 6 consecutive home runs in batting practice, and that really caught everyone's attention. But he struggled defensively, and John McGraw ended up not wanting him on the team. And the scout, Arthur Irwin, was still optimistic for Lou Gehrig. He told Gehrig that he could get him a contract on a Class A minor league team for the rest of the 1921 season. And Gehrig played 12 games in this league for the season under the names Lefty Gehrig and Lou Lewis. And this will be the reasons why he went out under a different name will be revealed a little later. And it is not clear if Lou Gehrig knew that playing professional baseball and then college baseball after that was against NCAA rules. So when it was found that Lou Lewis of the Hartford Senators was in fact actually Lou Gehrig of Columbia University, there was potential that he would be ineligible to play college baseball. And the head coach of Columbia contacted the coaches of their rivals to request to dismiss the breaking of this rule for Gehrig for what was called an honest mistake. He was saying that it was an honest mistake, and he wanted the rivals of Columbia to sort of forgive that and give him permission to play in college. And the coaches agreed to not keep him out of college baseball forever, which would be sort of the standard. However, they did suspend him from playing for 1 year of college baseball. So Gehrig did not play his freshman year, and eventually in his sophomore year was able to strap it up for Columbia. And that's where he set school records in average with a 444 average, slugging with a 937 slugging, and home runs with 7. And also, not only did he kill it with the bat, he was very good on the mound. He was a pitcher. He also pitched in 11 of the team's 19 games, and in one of the games, he struck out 17 batters, which remains a Columbia University single game record, which is pretty funny to me to imagine someone tying that record currently, and them being told that
they're on the same list as Lou Gehrig.
Yeah, they tied with Lou Gehrig, who is a famous first baseman. That's pretty funny, a pretty funny idea to me. So with this performance, with him setting school records left and right, Yankees scout Paul Critchell took a train from New Brunswick, New Jersey, in order to watch a game between Columbia and Rutgers. And the head coach of Columbia talked to the scout about Gehrig and actually advertised him more of a pitcher who could also hit. And after Gehrig hit 2 home runs in the game that the scout was going to, that scout called Yankees general manager Ed Barrow, saying that he had just discovered another Babe Ruth. That's what he said. And also, you may remember Ed Barrow. I did recognize the name. You may remember Ed Barrow from getting Hannes Wagner into the Atlantic League in 1896 and recommending him to the Louisville Colonels in 1897. So 25 years later in history, we're still talking about Ed Barrow. So a very important executive in baseball history, Mr. Ed Barrow, helping out both Hannes Wagner and then eventually talking to Lou Gehrig. And so beside the point, in Gehrig's next game after that, after he impressed the scout, He went 2 for 3 with a home run and also pitched a complete game victory. And after the game, the scout approached Gehrig and set up a meeting between Gehrig and the Yankees general manager for the next morning. And when the Yankees general manager offered Gehrig a $1,500 bonus and a $400 a month salary, Gehrig accepted it, and he was officially a New York Yankee.
So Lou Gehrig has made his way onto a professional baseball team, and he actually got some role play in pretty soon. In 1923, he started on the Yankees roster, but didn't play a huge role. He was mostly just taking some pinch hitting appearances. And after he went 1 for 5 with 2 strikeouts, Yankees manager Miller Hudgens asked him to play the rest of the season with the Hartford Senators. And oh, by the way, you may remember Millard Hudgens from last week, as he left Rogers Hornsby's Cardinals after a successful 1917 to manage the Yankees. So he flip-flopped from Rogers Hornsby's Cardinals to eventually Lou Gehrig's Yankees. And in 59 games with the Senators that season, Gehrig hit .304 with a 749 slugging percentage and 20 home runs. It's really good. When the Senators season ended, the Yankees called Gehrig back up. And in his first 2 pinch hit appearances, he went 1 for 2 with 2 RBI. And for the next 4 games, he hit .474 with a 1419 OPS. So he was hitting the ground running. And then later in the next season, in 1924, he attended Yankee spring training, but there was no spot on him on the field. And he played for the Hartford Senators again, where he had .369 with a 720 slugging percentage with 37 home runs in 134 games. And when he got called up to the Yankees, he went 6 for 12 with a walk and a double. So the next thing is a little tidbit from Society of American Baseball research from 1924, when they said the most memorable event from the brief stint came in a game against the Detroit Tigers. Gehrig hit a 2-run single to right field, but turned too far while rounding first and got caught off base. This led to an extended rundown in which Ty Cobb sprinted in from center field while Gehrig was caught in a pickle and tagged out the young slugger. Cobb swore at Gehrig as he tagged him, which is the most Ty Cobb thing ever. And Gehrig was, for the most part, a dignified player who rarely raised any kind of ruckus in the field. But now Cobb made him furious, and he cursed at Cobb while walking off the field, continuing to scream at the Georgia Peach from the steps of the Yankee dugout. The umpire warned Gehrig to pipe down, but he kept at Cobb. He kept going. And after another warning that went unheeded, the ump ejected Gehrig from the game, which only fanned the flames of his anger. When the game ended, still steaming from the altercation, Gehrig went after Cobb in the tunnel between the dugout and clubhouse, and despite teammate Babe Ruth's best efforts to contain him, Gehrig got loose and hurled a punch at the meanest man in baseball history. Unfortunately for Gehrig, he fanned on the haymaker, stumbled forward, landed on his head on the concrete floor, and was temporarily knocked out. When he awoke, the only thing he only said one thing: "Did I win?" No, he had not. But then again, few men ever got the best of Ty Cobb. So a crazy story there involving Ty Cobb. But yeah.
It's pretty wild. It reminds me of the 1990 Reds going in the...
Literally, he was the original nasty boy.
Yeah, we just went in the tunnel, and who knew it would have been Lou Gehrig, the mild-mannered...
And this is not like Lou Gehrig in his prime. Like, this is up-and-coming Lou Gehrig.
Yeah.
And Babe Ruth had to hold him back.
Yeah, facing a dead ball era legend in Ty Cobb. And now we get to 1925, which is where things start kicking for Lou Gehrig. Although Gehrig was put on the major league roster for the year, but he was on the bench as Wally Pipp was the first baseman for the Yankees. And Gehrig played in 12 games and started 5 through June 1st. And on June 2nd, he was given another start, and he went 3 for 5 with a double in that game on June 2nd. Then he continued to get starts for many consecutive games. And the original story of him getting that start was that Wally Pipp was suffering from a headache and asked if anyone had aspirin. And when the manager had overheard him, he decided to give Pipp the day off. And this is from the New York Times, Wally Pipp gave a different story in a little article from the New York Times in 1953. Here is the quote. Here's what actually happened. I was taking batting practice that day, and the guy who was pitching that day was a big, strong kid from Princeton, Charlie Caldwell. Charlie whistled one in, and somehow or other, I just couldn't duck. The ball hit me right there on the temple. Down I went, and I was much too far gone to bother reaching for any aspirin bottles. I was in the hospital for 2 solid weeks. By the time I returned to the Yankees, Gehrig was hitting the ball like crazy, and Huggins would have been a complete dope to give me my job back. He wasn't a dope, so he didn't do it. Not only was Gehrig a better ball player than I was, but he was 22 and I was 32. It was as simple as that, but please don't believe the aspirin story. It just isn't true. The story of him being in the hospital is unclear, at least to me, as his game logs on Baseball Reference showed that he appeared in games on June 3rd, June 4th, June 10th, and June 18th. So I don't think he was in the hospital the entire time, but hey, differing stories, but I bet parts of all that are different parts of all
He,
that.
he got hit in the head. You don't know.
Yeah. Part of it is different parts make up the whole story. And it also didn't help that Wally Pipp was hitting 244 with the 667 OPS up to that point, 244 with a 667 OPS. And from June 2nd to July 1st, basically a month's time frame, Gehrig hit 362 with a 1099 OPS in 108 plate appearances. And from June 2nd on, Gehrig played in every single game for the rest of the season. And Gehrig ended up hitting 295 with an 896 OPS, 127 OPS plus, and 122 weighted runs created plus, all in 497 plate appearances. And Gehrig would finish 24th in the MVP vote.
I gotta love that Wally Pipp story because it would have been more dignified for him to just be like, yeah, it was the aspirin story. Like he told it in full detail, and he seemed pretty humble. He was like, yeah, like of course he was gonna play Lou Gehrig over me. Like that would have been a stupid move.
Yeah,
I respect the hell out of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of good quality self-reflection.
For sure. So now we move on to 1926. Lou Gehrig is a full-time Yankee, and on August 13th, he became the first man to hit 2 over-the-fence home runs off of Walter Johnson in the same game. Walter Johnson is possibly the greatest pitcher of all time, so that is very impressive. And in that season, he hit 313 with a 969 OPS, 153 OPS plus, and 151 weighted runs created plus. He hit 361 with runners in scoring position, and he finished 4th in OPS, 5th in OPS plus, and 4th in weighted runs created plus. He led the league in triples with 20. He finished 3rd in Baseball Reference WAR and 2nd in Fangraphs WAR behind only Babe Ruth, which probably a name you're going to be hearing a lot when he was behind someone in the lineup, in stats, wherever. He finished 10th in the MVP vote, but this is the only season in baseball history with 15 plus home runs, 20 plus triples, 45 plus doubles, and 100 plus walks. That is Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig's 1926, the only one. The Yankees went 91-63 and won the pennant, and they were facing the team led by manager and second baseman Rogers Hornsby. So in game 1, they were down 1-0 in the first inning with the bases loaded and 1 out. Lou Gehrig hit into an RBI ground out, presumably beating out a double play. So helped his team get a run there. With the game tied 1-1 in the 6th and a man on second with 1 out, Gehrig hit an RBI single, and the Yankees won the game 2-1, giving Gehrig all the RBIs in the team's win. So he's doing it all with the bat for the Yankees. And then he went 2 for 7 combined in the next 2 games, which his team lost both by 4 runs. And then he went 4 for 6 with 3 walks and an RBI in games 4 and 5, where his team won both games. So now they're 1 win away from a World Series victory. However, Lou Gehrig goes 1 for 6 with 2 walks and an RBI in games 6 and 7. The team lost both games. Lou Gehrig was denied an opportunity to become a World Series champion. But he ended up hitting 348 with an 899 OPS throughout the series, but went 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position.
Yeah, and one side thing I will say is it's kind of funny how it lined up. Jimmy Fox played Rogers Hornsby's team in the World Series in 1929, and now Rogers Hornsby's team is facing Lou Gehrig's team in 1926. So we have
Yeah,
some World Series overlap, three from three different players.
in a row.
But yeah, in a row. Found that kind of funny. How it lined up. But yeah, the past three episodes have been highlighting kind of the same era, same types of players too, very offensive oriented. But anyway, now we're getting into uh, probably Lou Gehrig's prime, even though he was not the best player in baseball. In fact, uh, Lou Gehrig was the second best player in baseball during this time frame, and he was also the second best player on his team. Uh, this was from 1927 to 1932, where he, was putting up amazing numbers, but he was not really leading the league still in a lot of different categories. The most important ones being now wins above replacement, OPS, things like that. So it starts with 1927. Everyone knows about the 1927 Yankees, and Gehrig sort of made an adjustment. So another quote from Society of American Baseball Research says, despite Gehrig's impressive sophomore season, manager Miller Huggins criticized him in the offseason for not trying to pull the ball more. He wanted the big first baseman to take advantage of the short right field fences in many American League parks, including the one that was just 295 feet away from home plate in Yankee Stadium. Huggins told Gehrig that he could pull any pitcher, and indeed any pitch, if he set his mind to it. And 1927 is known for Babe Ruth hitting 60 home runs, which was a single season record that stood for 34 years. But Gehrig was actually tied with Ruth in home runs as late as Labor Day, when they both had 44 home runs each. Gehrig ended up on the season finishing third in average with a 373, second in OPS with a 1240 OPS, second in OPS plus with a 220 OPS plus, and second in weighted runs created plus with a 209 weighted runs created plus. He finished second in B WAR and second in F WAR, and every category previously mentioned where he finished second was to his teammate Babe Ruth. But also, Lou Gehrig led the league in offensive WAR and offensive runs above average, as he did accumulate 26 more plate appearances than Babe Ruth, as he played every game. And Gehrig that season in 1927 led the league in doubles with 52, also led the league in total bases, times on base, and RBI with 173 RBI. Also, how he was able to get those 173 RBI, he was very efficient with runners in scoring position. He hit 402 with runners in scoring position in 247 plate appearances with runners in scoring position. The 1927 Yankees 127 OPS plus remains the highest single season team OPS plus in the modern era. And after that, their lineup earned the nickname Murderers Row. Also, Lou Gehrig's 123 times on base with runners in scoring position are tied for the second most in a single season, behind Barry Bonds in 2004, where, of course, Barry Bonds had a 754 on base percentage with runners in scoring position. That's besides the point. But Lou Gehrig, his 11.8 B WAR in 1927 is the best produced in a single season by a man not named Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds, or Rogers Hornsby. And it is also the best B WAR to not lead the league in its particular season. Also, his 12.5 F WAR in 1927 is the best produced in a single season by a man not named Babe Ruth or Barry Bonds. Uh, one of only, besides two men, best single season F WAR, and it is the best F WAR to not lead the league in its particular season. Also, his F WAR would have led the American League in all but 5 seasons in baseball history and would have led all of Major League Baseball in all but 6 seasons. And his B WAR would have led the AL in all but 3 seasons in baseball history and led all of Major League Baseball in all but 6 seasons in baseball history, which is about 150 years. And also in 1927, Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig had the only season by teammates in baseball history with qualifying seasons with an OPS plus of 220 or better in a single season. It is also the only season by teammates in baseball history with qualifying seasons with a 1200 plus OPS in a single season. They're the only teammates to have a 1200 plus OPS in a single qualified season. They also had the only season by teammates in baseball history with 165 plus RBI each. They also had the only season by teammates in baseball history with 10 plus B WAR. And Gehrig by himself had the only season in the modern era with 215 plus hits and 105 plus walks. It is also the only season in baseball history with a 1200 plus OPS and 170 plus RBI. It is also the only season in baseball history with a 360 plus average, 45 plus home runs, and 170 plus RBI. It is also the only season in baseball history with 45 plus home runs, 45 plus doubles, and 10 plus triples. And it is also the most RBI in a single season by a player in their age 25 season or younger. And it is the highest B WAR and F WAR in a single season by a player in their age 24 season or younger. And because the AL MVP at this time could only be won once by a single player, and Babe Ruth had already won the award in 1923, Babe Ruth was ineligible. And so they gave it to the second best guy in the league that year, and that guy was Lou Gehrig, and Lou Gehrig won that MVP award in 1927. And the Yankees went 110-44 and won the pennant by a 19-game margin. And now we get into the World Series. In Game 1 against the Pirates, with the game scoreless in the first inning and a man on first, Lou Gehrig hit an RBI triple to give the Yankees the lead. He also hit a sacrifice fly later in the game, although a sacrifice fly was not a stat yet, so it would be considered an RBI flyout and also be counted as an at-bat. And Lou Gehrig ended up going 1 for 2 with 2 RBI on the day in a 5-4 victory over the Pirates. And in Game 2, he went 1 for 3 of the walk in a 6-2 win. In Game 3, with the game scoreless in the first inning and with men on first and second, Gehrig hit a 2-run triple, and he ended up going 2 for 3 with 2 RBI and an additional double on the day in an 8-1 victory. And despite going 0 for 5 in Game 4, the Yankees won Game 4 after walking off on a wild pitch, making Lou Gehrig a World Series champion. Gehrig hit .308 with a 1207 OPS and 4 RBI throughout the 1927 World Series.
So somehow, Lou Gehrig and the Yankees have to follow up that season. Don't know how it's going to be done, but before the season, Babe Ruth encouraged Lou Gehrig to be stiff in contract negotiations, telling him to not take a, quote, penny less than $30,000. And unfortunately, he didn't take his advice. He ended up getting a $25,000 contract a year for 3 years. However, his average improved by 1 point, his OBP decreased by 7 points, but his slugging percentage dropped 117 points after hitting 20 less home runs, 5 less doubles, and 5 less triples. So certainly not a great season for Lou Gehrig by the standards of the previous season. But, oh, by the way, he still finished third in average with a 374, second in OPS with an 1115, second in OPS plus with a 193, second in weighted runs created plus with a 192, all behind Babe Ruth. and he finished second in BWAR and FWAR to, you guessed it, Babe Ruth. He led the league in doubles with 47, led the league in RBI with 147, and OBP with a 467. He hit 400. He hit 405 with runners in scoring position, and he was no longer eligible for the MVP vote because of the previous season. And the Yankees won 101-53 and won the pennant.
So now we get into Lou Gehrig's the prime of his postseason legacy here. Just an unbelievable performance. I don't know how the pitchers were handling him at all. So Gehrig in game one, with the game scoreless in the first inning and a man on second with 2 outs, Gehrig hit an RBI double. Later in the game, he hit an RBI single to make it 4-1 Yankees, and he ended up going 2 for 4 with 2 RBI in the day in a 4-1 win. So a very good day to start the 1928 World Series. Then in game 2, with the game scoreless in the first inning and 2 men on with 1 out, Gehrig hit his first career World Series home run to make it 3-0, and he ended up going 1 for 3 with a walk on the day in a 9-3 win, of course, with that home run and 3 RBI. And in game 3, with the Yankees down 2-0 in the second inning, Gehrig cut the deficit in half with a solo home run. 2 innings later, the score was still 2-1, with Gehrig coming up with a man on first base. And of course, he hits another home run, giving them the 3-2 lead. So also, so far that day, Gehrig had all the RBI, all from home runs, giving them the 3-2 lead. And then Gehrig walked in his next 2 plate appearances on the day, and the Yankees won 7-3, going up 3-0 on the Cardinals. And in game 4 of the World Series, Lou Gehrig was walked in his first 3 plate appearances, and the Cardinals were leading 2-1 heading into the 7th inning. Mark Koenig led off the 7th inning by popping out to short. Then Babe Ruth hit a game-tying solo home run, and Lou Gehrig followed that up with a go-ahead solo home run. Gehrig ended up grounding out to the pitcher in his next at-bat, and the Yankees won Game 4 7-3, giving Lou Gehrig his second World Series championship. Throughout the series, Gehrig was unbelievable. He went 6 for 11 with 6 walks, 4 home runs, 9 RBI, and a 545, 706, 1727, 2433 quadruple slash line, and 0.99 win probability added, which if you don't know is unbelievable for a 4-game series. His win probability added for the series is the 6th highest in a single World Series, and his slugging and OPS from this World Series are single season World Series records. It was an unbelievable postseason performance by the Iron Horse.
That flashlight is goddamn ridiculous.
Yeah.
Wow. So we're finishing off the 20s here with 1929, and the Yankees become the first team this year to consistently implement uniform numbers and numbered them with the starting position in the players based on their number in the batting order. So wherever you hit the lineup, that was your number. And Lou Gehrig was number 4 because he was the cleanup hitter. So Gehrig hit 300 with a 431 OBP, 1015 OPS, 166 OPS plus, and 161 weighted runs created plus in 1929. He finished 2nd in OBP, 4th in OPS, 3rd in OPS plus, and 3rd in weighted runs created plus as well. He finished 5th in Baseball Reference WAR, 4th in FWAR, and the Yankees, they finished 2nd in the pennant race, so no World Series for them. And unfortunately, near the end of the season, the manager, Miller Huggins, passed away from a rare skin infection. So rest in peace.
Yes. So it was a transitional phase for the New York Yankees. A guy who had been their manager for 12 years passed away. So a transitional phase, and they had the Philadelphia Athletics, Jimmy Fox's Philadelphia Athletics, winning the pennant in 1929, kind of messing with their 1927, 1928 sort of groove that they had. So now in 1930, Lou Gehrig has another spectacular season, getting probably as close as he could to his 1927 self. Also, 1930 was the year of offense. Highest single season OPS in the modern era by the league. Lou Gehrig in that season finished second in average with a 379 average. He also finished second in OPS with an 1194, second in OPS plus with a 203, and second in weighted runs created plus with a 198, all behind the Babe. And he finished second in B-WAR and second in F-WAR behind Babe Ruth. Ruth and Gehrig each had an OPS plus of 200 or better for the second time. No other pair of teammates have had one such season in the modern era. So Ruth and Gehrig both 100% above average. No other teammate duo has ever done that. Lou Gehrig also led the league in RBI with 173, and he also led the league in total bases and times on base. And the 1930 Yankees and their 6.9 runs scored per game remain the most by a team in a single season in the modern era. And also their 872 team OPS remains the highest by a team in a single season in the modern era. Also, Lou Gehrig was exclusive in many ways in this 1930 season for himself. Even though it was not his best season, it was still unbelievable. Still things that we have never seen before, or never seen since, never seen before. Lou Gehrig in 1930 had the only season in the modern era with 220 plus hits and 100 plus walks. Also, he had the only season in baseball history with 120 plus singles, 40 plus doubles, 15 plus triples, and 40 plus home runs. So he was getting hits in a variety of different ways.
He was spraying the ball.
Spraying the ball, absolutely. Great pure hitting. Also, Lou Gehrig in 1930 had the only season in baseball history with 220 plus hits and 171 plus RBI. But unfortunately for the Yankees, they finished third in the pennant race. And after that, the Yankees fired their new manager and hired Joe McCarthy, not the guy who was calling out for the Red Scare and saying that there were communists all over Congress in the 50s.
He could have been doing that, though.
He very possibly could have, but the Joe McCarthy we're going to be talking about managed the New York Yankees, and he also managed the 1929 NL pennant winning Cubs. He was also known to be a strict disciplinarian who required good condition of his players, and Lou Gehrig really liked that. It was to the delight of Mr. Lou Gehrig, because Lou Gehrig always kept good condition himself and really wanted his teammates to kind of share that passion for it. So he felt that the team would be kind of improving out of this.
So now we move to 1931, and according to Baseball Almanac, Lou Gehrig played his 1,000th consecutive game on August 18th of this year. So pretty big accomplishment for him. Throughout the season, he finished fifth in average with a 341, second in OPS with an 1108, second in OPS plus with a 194, and second in weighted runs created plus to Babe Ruth, also with a 184. Finished second in Baseball Reference WAR and second in F-WAR. We already know who it was to. He led the league in total bases, times on base, runs scored with 163, RBI with 185, and hits with 211, as well as home runs with 46. This was his third season of 170 plus RBIs, and no one in baseball history has ever done that more than once in their entire careers. His 163 runs scored remained the third highest in a single season in the modern era. That is since 1900. That's the last 120 years of baseball. His 185 RBI remained the second most in a single season in baseball history. The 1931 Yankees, they had 1,067 runs scored, which remains the most by a team in a single season in the modern era. And Ruth and Gehrig combined, or to each have 160 RBI for the second time. No other pair of teammates has ever done that in a season. 1931 was the year when the MVP voting in the MLB was brought back to the modern form, so Gehrig was now eligible for an MVP vote. He finished second behind Lefty Grove, who won 31 games that year. Understandable. Gehrig's 53 games with 2+ RBI in 1931 remain tied for the most in a single season in baseball history. It is also the only season in baseball history with 110+ walks and 180+ RBI. It was the only season in baseball history with 160+ runs scored and 170+ RBIs. Once again, the only season in baseball history with 180 RBI and an OPS plus of 180 or better. Despite all this offense, the Yankees, they didn't win the pennant. They went 94-59 and finished second in the American League.
So now we move on to 1932, where the Yankees are looking to kind of break the Philadelphia Athletics dynasty. And Lou Gehrig was helping in that. And actually on June 3rd, Lou Gehrig hit 4 home runs in a 20-13 victory over those Philadelphia Athletics. And he became the 3rd man in baseball history to hit 4 home runs in a game and the first man to do it in the modern era. And I would presume that he was the first man to hit 4 over the fence home runs.
I was literally about to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. In a single game.
We can only infer.
Yeah, I would assume, but we don't have all the facts, so we're not going to claim to have all of them. But Gehrig in 1932, another spectacular season, finished 3rd in average with a 349. I mean, I guess it's still a step back. He's not finishing 2nd in these categories. He also finished 3rd in OPS with a 1072, 3rd in OPS plus with a 181, and 3rd in weighted runs created plus behind the MVP winner, Jimmy Fox, and also behind Babe Ruth. And he also finished 3rd in B WAR and 3rd in F WAR behind Mr. Fox and Mr. Ruth. And Gehrig finished 2nd in the MVP vote behind Jimmy Fox. And the Yankees finally broke the mold, and they went 107-47 and won the American League pennant to get back into the World Series. So in game 1 of this series, in the 4th inning, with the Yankees down 2-1 and a man on first, Gehrig hit a home run to give them a 3-2 lead. Gehrig ended up going 2 for 4 with a walk on the day and a 12-6 win over the Cubs in game 1 of the 1932 World Series. Then in game 2, in the 1st inning with the Yankees down 1-0 and men on first and second, Gehrig hit a game-tying RBI single, and Gehrig ended up going 3 for 4 on the day in a 5-2 victory over the Cubs. And then in game 3, Lou Gehrig hit a solo home run in the 3rd inning. And then in the 5th, in the at-bat after Babe Ruth called his shot according to legend, Gehrig followed that up with a solo home run of his own. And Gehrig ended up going 2 for 5 on the day in a 7-5 victory. And then in game 4, in a scoreless game in the 1st inning with the bases loaded and no one out, Gehrig hit an RBI flyout, or what we would know today as a sacrifice fly. And he hit a double in his next plate appearance, grounded out in the one after that. Then he came up in the 6th with the Yankees down 4-3 and men on 2nd and 3rd, where Gehrig would hit a go-ahead 2-run single, coming up clutch left and right. And Gehrig was hit and walked in his following 2 plate appearances, and he ended up 2 for 4 on the day with 3 RBI in a 13-6 win, giving Gehrig his 3rd World Series championship. And throughout the series, Gehrig went 9 for 17 with 9 runs scored, 3 home runs, 8 RBI, 2 walks, 1 hit by pitch, a 529, 600, 1118, 1718 quadruple slash line, and 0.83 win probability added in the World Series. His OPS in this series remains the 9th highest in World Series history. And unbelievable postseason performance. This kind of caps off an unbelievable era for Lou Gehrig, sort of the, prime of his career, even though he sort of still had to play second fiddle in a way. So from 1927 to 1932, Gehrig averaged a 353, 457, 668, 1124 quadruple slash line, a 193 OPS plus over a 6-year span, 187 weighted runs created plus, 206 hits, 143 runs scored, 41 doubles, 14 triples, 38 home runs, 159 RBI, 9.3 B WAR, and 9.4 F WAR per year in this 6-year stretch from 27 to 32. Also from 1927 to 1932, he was fourth in triples, third in doubles, third in hits, and third in walks. And in this 6-year span, he was second in on-base percentage, slugging, OPS, weighted runs created plus, home runs, runs scored, RBI, B WAR, and F WAR. Second in all those categories behind the legendary Babe Ruth. And he also led the league in games played from 1927 to 1932, had a little streak going for himself that I guess has become legend for sure.
So now we move into a transition of power from 1933 to 1937. We'll start in that first year. In early June, New York World Telegram sports writer, wow, Dan Daniel. You really gave me the part of the script that has that name in it, huh?
Yeah.
That's what I should have been named. Publicized Lou Gehrig's consecutive games played streak. At one point, stating to Gehrig that he was 57 games away from breaking the record set by former Red Sox and Yankees shortstop Everett Scott, who played 1,307 games in a row between 1960 and 1985. The streak actually ended 1 month before Gehrig started. He started at first base for the first time ever in the All-Star game that year. And on August 17th, he played his 1,308th consecutive game, breaking the record. And when Gehrig was called to home plate in the top of the first inning, the American League president presented Gehrig with a small silver statue to commemorate the record. Gehrig went 2 for 5 with an RBI triple on the day, and he finished third in the majors in average with a 334, second in OPS with a 1030, second in OPS plus with a 177, and second in weighted runs created plus with 168. He finished third in B WAR, fourth in F WAR, fourth in the MVP vote, and this was the year that Gehrig had more WAR than Babe Ruth. First time that ever happened. The Yankees went 91-59, finished second in the American League, did not make the playoffs.
Yeah, so Lou Gehrig finally kind of getting more attention than Babe Ruth. He had a better year than Babe Ruth for the first time in his career. So now, it's kind of a transition of maybe him becoming the face of New York baseball. And he definitely emphasizes this in the year of 1934, both him improving and Ruth kind of declining. So in 1934, Lou Gehrig won the Triple Crown, not just in the American League, but also entire Major League Baseball. He led the league in average home runs and RBI. He had a 363 average with 49 home runs and 166 RBI. He also led the league in total bases, the entire quadruple slash line, slashing 363, 465, 706, 1172. He also led the league, of course, in OPS plus with a 207 and weighted runs created plus with a 194. And after 5 8+ win seasons, he led the league in B WAR and F WAR for the first time in his career. Finally gets that honor. Definitely didn't know about that at the time, but historically speaking, now kind of fun to point out. 5 8+ win seasons, finally leads the league in B WAR and F WAR. And Gehrig ended up finishing 5th in the MVP vote, I guess, as the Yankees did not win the pennant that year. It is the only season, Gehrig's 1934 season is the only season in the modern era with 210 plus hits, 100 plus walks, and less than 34 strikeouts. How about that? Also, Gehrig's 1934 is the only season in baseball history with 45 plus home runs and less than 35 strikeouts. How about that? And the Yankees ended up going 94-60, but finishing second in the pennant race. And after the 1934 season, the Yankees did not bring back Babe Ruth. And at this point, Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig were number 2 and number 1 and number 2 in career home runs. And some how about that's with them being teammates and all. Ruth and Gehrig had 6 seasons when they each had 25 plus home runs and 125 plus RBI. No other pair of teammates in baseball history has more than 2 such seasons. Ruth and Gehrig also had 6 seasons when they each had 7.5 plus B WAR. No other pair of teammates in baseball history has more than 2 such seasons. And lastly, perhaps the most ridiculous Ruth and Gehrig stat. Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig have the only 6 qualifying seasons by teammates in the modern era with an OPS plus of 176 or better. There's 6 seasons by teammates with an OPS plus of 176 or better in the modern era. Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig have all 6 of them. It's quite unreal.
Clean sweep.
Yeah.
Now we move into 1935. Lou Gehrig is still tearing it up. He finishes 6th in average, 2nd in OPS. By the way, 329 average, 1049 OPS. 2nd in OPS plus with 175. 2nd in weighted runs created plus with 171. He led the league in runs scored with 125, walks with 132, and OBP with a 466. He led the league in both B WAR and F WAR. He finished 5th in the MVP vote, but unfortunately, once again, the Yankees went 89 and 60, finished 2nd in the MVP race, in the pennant race.
So now we move on to 1936, where there's kind of a transition period for the Yankees. 1935 was sort of the transition period. 1936, we have some reinforcements. So after a year without Babe Ruth in the lineup, a rookie named Joe DiMaggio emerged in the number 3 spot in the lineup ahead of Lou Gehrig. So now Lou Gehrig kind of had I guess, you could say protection or I guess you could say. And Gehrig finished 5th in average that year with a 354 average. He also led the league in runs scored with 167, walks with 130, home runs with 49, on base percentage with 478, slugging with 696, OPS with 1174, OPS plus with 190, and weighted runs created plus with 178. Also, the reason he was able to drive in so many runs, he hit 380 with runners in scoring position. And as a result, Lou Gehrig led the league in both B WAR and F WAR, and he finally wins his 2nd MVP. They've decided to give him the honor, despite him leading in B WAR and F WAR the previous 2 seasons. And Lou Gehrig's 167 runs scored are the 2nd most in a single season in the modern era and the 4th most in baseball history. And his 167 runs scored are the most in a single season by a player in their age 31 season or older. How about that? And it is the only season by a player in their age 33 season or older with 700 plus plate appearances and 190 OPS plus or better. How about that? It's important to include that because, a lot of 33-year-olds aren't playing every single day, and he was able to rack up those plate appearances, get over 700 plate appearances, and do that. Kind of helps that he also played in a high-scoring offense, but still very, very impressive. And Lou Gehrig's 1934 and 1936 seasons remain the only seasons in baseball history with 200 plus hits, 100 plus walks, 40 plus home runs, and less than 50 strikeouts. Also, his 1936 season is the only season in baseball history with 200 plus hits, 130 plus walks, 40 plus home runs, and less than 50 strikeouts. And the Yankees would go on to go 102 and 51 and win the pennant by a 19.5 game margin.
Nail biter.
Yeah, they were. It was an absolute race for the pennant. And in Game 1 of the World Series against the New York Giants. Lou Gehrig went 0 for 3 with a hit by pitch in a 6-1 loss against them. Then in game 2, with the bases loaded and no one out, Gehrig hit an RBI flyout to make it 1-0 Yankees. Later in the game, Gehrig hit a 2-run single and ended up 2 for 5 with a walk and 3 RBI on the day in an 18-4 victory. Then in game 3, with the game scoreless in the second inning, Gehrig hit a solo home run and ended up going 1 for 3 on the day in a 2-1 win. Then in game 4, he went 2 for 4 with a 2-run home run in a 5-2 victory. The Yankees were now up in the series 3-1. Then in game 5, he went 1 for 4 with a walk in a 5-4 loss. And in game 6, with the game tied 2-2 and men on first and third in the third inning, Gehrig hit an RBI flyout. And the Yankees did not trail for the rest of the game after that. And Gehrig ended up going 1 for 5 with a walk en route to winning his 4th World Series. Gehrig throughout the series ended up hitting .292 with a .976 OPS. Very, very impressive still. Even in a down World Series, he's still doing better than 95% of hitters would do.
Yeah. So now we go to 1937, and Lou Gehrig finishes second in average with a 351. He leads the league in walks with 127, OBP with a 473, OPS with an 1176, OPS plus with a 176, and weighted runs created plus with a 176 as well. He hit 360 with runners in scoring position, and he led the league in B-WAR and finished second in F-WAR behind Joe DiMaggio. He finished 4th in the MVP vote and produced the only season by a player in their age 34 season or older with 200 plus hits and 125 plus walks. This was also the only season by a player in their age 34 season or older with 700 plus plate appearances and an OPS of 175 or higher. And once again, the Yankees went 102-52. They won the same amount of games as last year, and they won the pennant by a 13-game margin. So now we're in the World Series once again. In Game 1, Gehrig goes 0 for 2 with 2 walks and an 8-1 win over the Giants. And in Game 2, he goes 1 for 2 with 2 walks in another 8-1 win. So the theme is he's getting on base by way of free passes, and they're winning the games 8-1. So now in Game 3, he goes 1 for 5 with an RBI flyout, later deemed a sac fly, but considered an official at bat in a 5-1 win. So now the Yankees are 1 win away from Gehrig's 5th World Championship, but it wouldn't come in Game 4. Gehrig went 1 for 4 with a home run in the 7-3 loss. But in Game 5, he hit a double and a triple for his 2 hits and 4 at-bats with an RBI in a 4-2 win that gave him his 5th World Series championship. And Gehrig throughout this series slashed 294, 455, 647, 1102. Once again, really impressive. But now we're going into the stage of his career where he's just going too soon, unfortunately. In 1938, he played his 2,000th consecutive game on May 31st. He played through pain, but was starting to lose power and skill. And he was moved from the number 4 spot in the lineup to the number 5 spot permanently in June. And he hit 295 with a 932 OPS, 132 OPS plus, and 133 weighted runs created plus. Still really good by Major League standards, though. His average OBP and OPS were his worst since 1925, and his 523 slugging was the worst of his career. And with runners in scoring position, he hit 242. In this season, the Yankees went 99-53 and won the pennant once again by a 9.5 game margin. And Gehrig got exactly 1 hit in each of the World Series games and got a walk in 2 of those games. All the hits were singles. He didn't drive in a run. And he hit 286 with a 661 OPS as the Yankees swept the Cubs, and Gehrig became a 6-time World Series champion. This would be the last time he plays in a World Series, and his career World Series /playoff /line: 361, 483, 731, 1214 quadruple slash line with 10 home runs, 35 RBI, and 26 walks in 150 plate appearances in 34 games. He remains the all-time leader in win probability added in the World Series.
Yeah, Lou Gehrig, absolute playoff legend. I think people forget about that, but he really was. And now we get into kind of the unfortunate part of his life and his career. Not kind of, definitely the unfortunate part. So in 1939 spring training, Lou Gehrig was hitting 100 with no extra base hits in his first 10 games of spring training. This was a bad sign. And during one batting practice session, Gehrig swung and missed at 19 straight pitches. And one afternoon in the clubhouse, he collapsed trying to put on his pants. But heading into opening day in 1939, it was very clear something was wrong with him. But manager Joe McCarthy wasn't going to bench him just yet. You know, the man had 2,122 consecutive games played. You kind of have to trust the guy in saying that, you know, he wants to play. It's kind of his say up to this point after, 2,000 plus consecutive games played. And unfortunately, in Gehrig's first 8 games of the season, he went 4 for 28. And famously, for the 9th game of that season, Lou Gehrig told Joe McCarthy that it was time for him to sit out. It was time for him to sit out for a while. And he would continue to travel with the Yankees, but he did not play another game for them. And as his condition worsened, his wife contacted the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and a team of doctors reviewed Lou Gehrig's case and did intensive testing for 6 days. And they determined that Gehrig had amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as ALS, and now also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. And this disease caused the hardening of the spinal cord, which caused slow, painful deterioration of muscles and nerve endings, which would eventually lead to his lungs and heart not being able to work, which would lead to his premature death. And he was given about 3 years to live. And on June 21st, the Yankees announced Lou Gehrig's retirement. On June 4th, the Yankees held Lou Gehrig Appreciation Day. On July 4th, the Yankees held Lou Gehrig Appreciation Day with a ceremony taking place in between games of a doubleheader against the Washington Senators. And with this ceremony, this was where Gehrig became the first Major League Baseball player to have his number retired. And the ceremony included speeches from, some staples of New York. The mayor of New York had a speech there, and the manager of the Yankees, Joe McCarthy, who Gehrig really liked, had a speech there. And of course, Babe Ruth showed up, and Babe Ruth himself made a speech for Lou Gehrig. And finally, the microphone was passed to the Iron Horse.
For the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about a bad brag. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. When you look around, wouldn't you consider it privilege to associate yourself with such a fine-looking man as is standing in uniform in this ballpark today? That I might have been given a bad break, but I've got an awful lot to live for. Thank you.
One of the most famous moments in baseball history, in general human history. You don't really see a guy that, he knows he's heading out for in the next 3 years, a guy who just, years prior was in the prime of his career, winning MVPs in the American League. And now he kind of has to do a swan song for not only his career, but his life, unfortunately. And Lou Gehrig, in October of 1939, he accepted a paid role as New York City parole commissioner, and his wife would help guide his hand signing the necessary documents. So he was kept on a payroll in New York because of his unfortunate situation. kind of felt, I guess the city of New York felt they kind of owed him one because, no one had really seen anything like this at this point. And in December of 1939, the BBWAA held a special election to induct Lou Gehrig into the Hall of Fame, and Gehrig would eventually die on June 2nd, 1941, at the age of 37, 16 years to the exact date he got the start over Wally Pipp. But, this episode really isn't about his early passing. It's kind of about, it's a celebration of how great of a baseball player he really was. And now we get into the all-time ranks of where he ranks among the baseball greats, because it's very, very impressive.
Yeah, Chris, there's no doubt that it was a tragedy what had happened to him. Nothing in his control, nothing he could have done about it. It's just really unfortunate. But nonetheless, he was an incredible ball player. He ranked 17th all-time in average with a 340, 5th in on-base percentage with a 447, 3rd in slugging percentage with a 632, and 3rd in OPS, like you mentioned earlier in the show, with a 1080. 4th in OPS plus with a 179, and 3rd in weighted runs created plus with a 173. He ranked 28th in home runs with 493, 19th in total bases, 17th in walks with 1,508, 12th in runs scored, and 7th in RBI with 1,995. Unfortunately, he had to stop playing just 7 home runs shy of 500 and 5 RBIs shy of 2,000, which is really sad. But nonetheless, the fact that he even got there in that little time is very impressive. He ranks 13th in position player baseball reference WAR and 12th in position player FanGuide WAR. And among spacemen, he's second in WAR, 2nd in FWAR, 1st in OPS, slugging OPS, OPS plus, and weighted runs created plus.
So now we move on to the special stats of Lou Gehrig that really show the unique career of the Iron Horse. And this is Lou Gehrig edition of the official edition, where it's only dedicated to the How About That's. His 5 seasons with 400 plus total bases are the most such seasons in baseball history. His 12 seasons with 125 plus runs scored are the most such seasons in baseball history. His 7 seasons with 150 plus RBI are the most such seasons in baseball history. His 11 seasons with 650 plus plate appearances and a 1,000 plus OPS are the most such seasons in baseball history. So that combines, his ability to play every day and do it at a high level. His 11 seasons with 650 plate appearances and a 160 OPS plus or better are the most such seasons in baseball history. He also has 7 seasons with 200 plus hits and 100 plus walks. No one else in baseball history has more than 4 such seasons. He is also the only player in baseball history with 2,700 plus hits and 1,500 plus walks in less than 10,000 career plate appearances. And he also has the most RBI for someone with less than 10,000 career plate appearances. So he's, if the unfortunate things that happened to him didn't happen to him, he's a guy that probably could have held the all-time RBI record at his pace if he didn't have to hang up at the age of 35. Because most seasons with 150 plus RBI, the guy drove in runs like crazy. It was an offensive era. He was on a great Yankees team where there were a lot of guys on base for him, and obviously he killed it with runners in scoring position. So, unfortunate that it was a bit of an incomplete career, but still what he was able to do ultimately was unbelievable. And now we move on to the legacy of Lou Gehrig. He was one half of the greatest duo in baseball history. We went over the How About That's with him and Babe Ruth. They had, the 2 best, at least in the late 20s, early 30s, they had the 2 best hitters in baseball on one team. two of the best hitters in baseball all time, and number one and number 3 all time in OPS on one team at the same time. Pretty unbelievable that happened, and that's why they're the greatest duo in baseball history. And Lou Gehrig was a big part of that. He wasn't just the sidekick. He was unbelievable too. And without Ruth there, he would have been the best player in baseball of that time for sure. And Gehrig was a symbol of humility and work ethic, getting up, playing every day, and shutting up about it. Kind of in contrast to Babe Ruth. You'd say, I guess, more likable than Babe Ruth. Just kind of pulling up the bootstraps, getting to work, going out there, hitting a home run, driving in runs. That's what he did every single day. Did it consecutively 2,130 times, and never really thought anything of it. And also Lou Gehrig, I think what gets kind of lost in history, one of the greatest postseason performers of all time. And there's a good argument he might have been the greatest postseason performer of all time. He has the highest career win probability added in World Series history. And, he doesn't even have like the most games played in World Series history or any of that. But what he was able to do in the 7 World Series.
That's all you need to say.
Yeah. 1214 OPS in the World Series is quite unreal. And what he was able to do in those 7 World Series was absolutely crazy, especially when you consider you're facing top competition in there, the best team in the National League. And, also part of his legacy, he's likely the greatest first baseman of all time. He does rank second in B WAR and F WAR to Stan Musial. But when you compare, I guess peak WAR and Jaws and the rate statistics that, Lou Gehrig wasn't able to get those count statistics because of the ALS that happened to him. But, I would say pretty prominently that he is, across eras, the greatest first baseman of all time. And, ultimately his human legacy, if you have never heard of baseball, or if you've never watched baseball, don't really care about baseball history, you still probably know, you've heard Lou Gehrig's name before. They named the nickname for ALS is Lou Gehrig's disease, and his battle with it made ALS public knowledge, which is a very big deal in society. Now, you have people raising money for it, raising money for research, trying to find cures for it. And it all kind of started with Lou Gehrig. He's made that impact in his human life. And, the fact that it happened to such a well-liked individual, it sucks that it did happen, but it did make the impact of ALS kind of more well-known. So in human history, he has that. So that's the legacy of Lou Gehrig.
Yeah. If you go back to any video on YouTube from, years ago when the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge was a thing, and you saw a story about like a news team covering it, at some point they probably referred to it on that broadcast as Lou Gehrig's disease. This is not just, baseball fans recognize it as Lou Gehrig. The world recognizes ALS as Lou Gehrig's disease because of the awareness he was able to spread in his fight. And that, that paved the way for guys like Pete Frates in that instance to spread their awareness and donate the money that they were able to donate through that trend.
Yeah, for sure. It's wild that, something, a guy so prominent can make it that way. And it makes sense. It was baseball in the late 30s. He was on the best team and was, if he could have kept playing, he would have been the second guy to reach 500 home runs, would have been the second guy to reach 2,000 RBI. But it was not able to happen for him. But yeah.
Yeah, he was still he didn't even really have a downfall as a player before getting ALS. He still had like significantly above average seasons up until kind of the end.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 1938, he was still 32% above average,
Mhm.
according to Baseball Reference, 33% above average, according to Fangraphs. And yeah, it's something that, with Lou Gehrig, one of the reasons I picked him was because, during quarantine, I was like looking at stats, and then I was like, Lou Gehrig, 1080 OPS. And, you think about Lou Gehrig, you don't really think about him being one of the greatest hitters of all time, but he
He
really was.
He
He really
is.
was. And, he's top 15 all time in B WAR and F WAR. He was an unbelievable player, and, had some unbelievable years. And, it doesn't get recognized, because he has a bigger legacy than that in like human history, and he was behind Babe Ruth on his own team. So
Yep.
that's Lou Gehrig. So yeah, we that's the end of the episode. Very good episode. Very glad to talk about him and impact on the game, impact on general human history. So we hope you enjoyed part one of episode 77, our 20th history episode thus far. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, want to watch the videos with us. Today was just one video. Go to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's called STBNL with Christianta and Daniel Curran. Also, if you want to catch up with the rest of the baseball history series, the entire baseball history series is under a YouTube playlist, so you can get that all chronologically. And also, if you want to follow us on social media, follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianza, follow Daniel on Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow our show Instagram at STBNL Podcast. Get notices when we're uploading these things. And we would also like to thank Society of American Baseball Research for all the information, off the field information with Lou Gehrig. Baseball Reference, especially StatHead, for all those how about that's, and of course Fangraphs for all the stats they were able to give us. And we hope you enjoyed our Lou Gehrig part of the episode, and we hope to see you tomorrow, where we will be talking about the 2018 Milwaukee Brewers. See you then.